it's Lori again, and welcome back to my kitchen. We have been busy foraging wildflowers on our place where we know it's safe to harvest them and they haven't been contaminated by any sprays or chemicals. We don't use anything around our homestead that would make them dangerous to consume. So I want to just share with you today one of the ways that I use wild forage flowers like dandelions and wild violets is I dehydrate them or allow them to dry, and then I use them for hot tea, just steeping them in hot tea. And so I'd like to show you today exactly how I do that, and then how I go on to store them for long-term storage for use through, you know, the summer, fall, winter, and into the next spring. So we'll get started on how I dehydrate or dry some of our wildflowers around here. All right, so I have been foraging today, and wild violets are one of the things that I got foraged. And what I do for these, now you can make wild violet jelly, which is amazing. I've made it many times, and it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. But what I'm going to do this year is I am just going to dehydrate, because I'm running low on these. I'm going to dehydrate these violet blooms. And you can see that the violets, they usually come in purple, but wild violets can also come in yellow, and they are both edible and both marvelous. So after you pick your violet blooms, and you don't really want a whole lot of excess stem on there, all right? Just pick off those little tiny beautiful flower heads. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to spread them on parchment paper and allow them to air dry, all right? You don't have to put these into the dehydrator. You can just air dry them and just kind of ruffle them out into a single layer. And for the next couple of days, just simply once a day, just come along and kind of stir them up, and then spread them out again into just a single layer. And you are going to have amazing dried violets for hot tea whenever you want it. So, like I said, just in a single layer and allow them to air dry. There is nothing special about this at all. It's not difficult. Anybody can do this. I do try to, you know, go through there and see if I can pick off any excess stems or whatever that I might have missed during picking, and any little blades of grass or anything like that that might have gotten into my basket. But that's all there is to it. Just a single layer on parchment paper. Let it just remain at air or at room temperature. Allow them to air dry, and just mix them up once a day for about 3 days until they're completely dry. All right, so these are our violet blossoms after about 48 hours of just lying out at room temperature, just air drying. And they have just dried so beautifully. See a little piece of grass in there I'm going to remove. But there's just no trick to it at all. I just lay it out, like I said, on parchment paper, and I come along and I kind of rustle them around a couple of times during the air drying process. But look at how absolutely lovely these are. And these also, since I've dehydrated them, I will be using these for hot tea, along with my dandelion petals that I air dry. But I just store these just like my dandelion petals. I just store these in a glass airtight container and then take out what I need as I need it for a cup of hot tea. So that is how easy it is to forage your own flowers, air dry, dehydrate, whatever you want to call it, and store them. So I'm going to get these into a very small, probably a half-pint jar, and I'm going to go and harvest some more too, so that I have a larger amount for the remainder of the winter, you know, month. So I have placed my air dehydrated violets in just a little 1/4 pint jar. I am going to forage quite a few more of these. We've just been rained out for days now. So hopefully I'll be able to get out and harvest a few more yet this spring. This is not the normal amount that I get. I usually get a lot more than this, but the spring weather has just not been cooperating with us at all. But anyway, so I'm just storing it in a quarter-pint jar after it's completely dried and capping it up. And you can use the two-piece ring, you know, flat and ring if you want to. I just happen to have one of these really nice little one-piece lids that I'm going to use for this. And this will store for months and just make absolutely wonderful additions to hot tea. All right, so as far as dandelion flowers are concerned, the yellow part is really the only part that you want if you're making dandelion jelly or dandelion honey. You can also freeze these, or you can dehydrate them for use in tea. And what I do is pretty much just like with the violet blossoms, I take all of just the yellow petals that we have harvested and I just spread them out just in a single layer, and I allow them to air dry. All right, the thinner the better. I don't have a big enough cookie sheet at this point in time, so I'm probably going to come along in about another hour and just kind of stir and mix these up and continue doing that 2 or maybe 3 times every day until they are nice and dry. And you will see this starting to literally shrink before your eyes. Okay, it's nice and fluffy and yellow at this point in time, but you can tell when they're starting to dehydrate because they just kind of reduce down to almost nothing at all. But the dandelion petals make amazing hot tea. And so this year I am just dehydrating them instead of electing to make dandelion jelly or dandelion honey. So this is how I dehydrate our dandelion flower petals, just in a single layer and air dry. All right, guys, so I have, we harvested just the yellow, excuse me, just the yellow dandelion petals off of our dandelions, and I have simply just allowed them to air dry. Now, if you have a dehydrator that you can just set for no temperature at all and just have just the fan running, that will work also, as long as your fan isn't strong enough to blow your dandelion petals around. But with dandelion petals, if you heat dehydrate them, you are going to have problems with them just turning into white fluff, okay? So this is why I prefer personally to just air dry them, like what we've done here. And this is the finished result of just air drying the dandelion petals. And we will use these in tea. You can actually even rehydrate these and use them to make dandelion honey or dandelion jelly if you want to. You can even make dandelion wine using these also. Dandelion petals, when you have harvested them this way, dandelion petals also freeze very well. But when you are planning on using them in anything other than tea, I do suggest that you take your measurement of the dandelion petals while they are fresh. So before you stick them in the freezer, measure your fresh petals and mark the Ziploc bag that you're going to store them in the freezer so that you know what the fresh measurement was. I'm going to grab a bag of dandelion petals from my freezer so that you can see exactly what I mean, and I will be back in just one moment. All right, so here is an example of frozen dandelion petals. Now, believe it or not, these are from last year, and you can see that they're not frosty or anything, but dandelion petals actually freeze very, very, very well. But what I do is I always take my measurement while the dandelion petals are fresh and before they are frozen, because you're not going to get an accurate measurement after you have frozen them. So I just mark my fresh measurement on my Ziploc bag before storing them in the freezer. And you can see my fingers. This is what happens when you're harvesting dandelions. Your fingernails get this black stuff underneath them. It's kind of a dirty process, I guess, when you're picking these petals off. But these can go ahead and be used then. You know, since I have my measurement, 4 cups is the amount that I use for a recipe of dandelion jelly. And you can find our dandelion jelly recipe down in the description of this video, and it shows you the recipe that I use and the method that I use for canning it when it's done. But dandelion petals freeze absolutely amazing. These work very well also from frozen state. I just allow them to come to room temperature, and from the frozen state, it makes amazing dandelion wine also. So that's how I freeze my dandelion petals. All right, so after allowing my dandelion petals to completely air dry, where you know, you'll be able to tell whether they are dry enough or not. You'll just learn that as you do it. But you know, these are just completely dry. There's no moisture left in them at all. Then all I do is I just store them in an airtight container for use in tea, and just take whatever amount I want for a cup of tea each time I open the container. And they, of course, kind of smush down really easy. They're puffy and spongy. Kind of reminds me of what you find inside of a pillow on your bed. Just kind of puffy, nice stuff. But anyway, I just go ahead and I put my dehydrated petals into an airtight container, and there you have it. You have so many cups of goodness in this small jar. Just kind of mash them in there, and they're just useful for months and months and months. And the nutrition of these, the health benefit of these is just amazing and incredible. So I hope you give this a try in your own kitchens. God bless you all, and happy canning and preserving, everyone.